All right, welcome everybody to the next episode of Tilton the Scales. This is actually the 30th episode that will be published. So this is the Dirty 30. So welcome everybody. It's good to see you. And glad Tim, a friend of the show, Tim, could jump on with us. Of course, my co-host Wally Hall and Chet Bowen are with us as well. We'll go around the horn, starting with Chet first, and just tell us how your week's been. Anything happened this week that was significant in your world, and then we'll pass it on.
Sure. Did a couple of trainings at work that I hope work out for the clients especially, but also the staff. My family could jump in any moment. They're still up at the neighbor's house where they can walk through because it was last day of school today, so they're celebrating at the
Ah,
pool. I, out of my commitment for this show, walked back through the woods on my own to make sure I could be here. You're welcome.
yes, thank
Yeah.
you. And you
Is
were
there a
on
chance
time.
we have drunken neighbors pop on like we've had in
Ooh,
the past?
Probably not. Maybe an angry wife.
All right. Well, I look forward to it.
yeah, that could happen. Tim, how's everything been?
Um, yeah, kind of sailing along. We're trying to help Wyatt figure out his plans for, you know, the fall, which is sort of like the gateway to the rest of his life. Um, and I have a couple of good friends who all of our kids grew up together. They're sort of uncles in a way, and kind of sat down with them, like let's kind of hash out what you're good at, and so it's really nice having those kind of that community around. Um, Been spending a lot of time trying to put the finishing touches on well, let's say we won't say finishing touches. We'll say the end is in sight on a book that I'm trying to write, and hopefully it will be done by the editing process um, is the bottleneck, I think, at this point. So, but yeah, Lord willing, by the end of the year, well, I guess we'll see if that happens. But hopefully sooner. I'm pretty much done writing it. I just need
Yeah,
to
nice. Are
get.
you self-publishing, or are you using a
Most
company and
likely,
an editor and all?
part of me would like to solicit a an agent and just say, "Hey, just toss this around to a couple places." And um, I I'm doubtful that will happen because they like to see that you got a couple in the magazine behind it. I think
Yeah,
you can be profitable.
yeah,
So which I really don't. I think
Yeah.
that I've been looking at some self-publishing
yeah, yeah.
stuff, and so we'll see if that happens.
Are you gonna do an audiobook?
I will. I'm going to do it in an accent. You get to choose the accent.
Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you
Indian.
could do it AI now, but as far
Oh
as
gosh.
I just mean audiobook in general, like it'd be cool if you
Yeah.
did read it and
Yeah, I will. I
you're
think I
reading
will.
to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably will. It,
That's
you
cool,
know,
man.
cost me nothing to do that, so I probably
Yeah.
will.
That's cool, man. Let us know when that drops, because I'll plug it on
Yeah,
our social media
sure.
and make sure I can get it to him, because that's significant, man.
Yeah.
Publishing your own book, or just writing your own book, or enough to comprise a book, like that's awesome, man.
Yeah, man. Oh God.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Wally, how was your week?
I Nothing as exciting as that. School ended in my household this week as well, so it's just kind of been end of the year shenanigans, kind of wrapping things up and getting ready for summer, that sort of stuff. Nothing too exciting. How about you, Nate? There's been big happenings in your world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my house is. I'll close on my house that I'm currently in, the Lone Star Studio, and then the Lone Star Studio. Less than hopefully a day or two after that, the Lone Star Studio will then move to the College Station Bryan area, which I found a house. It's not final yet, but I put some earnest money on it and just waiting on. I'm trying to shop around to see if I can get some lenders to get me a better interest rate, or at least put it in writing. I don't know how much I need to pay them to put it in writing so that I can show them, and then they'll drop the interest rate just a little bit. So 5.25 is what I got the interest rate down to. So it's not what I mean, what was it, March? In March, I think it was with the same lender and builder, it was three and a half.
Hmm.
So since March, it's gone up. So not too happy about that because, but yeah, that's what's been going on in my world. How's your back, Wally? Is it better this week?
It's good. I'm good. I'm back to 100%. Get the remnants of that cold kicking around, but I'm tougher than the average bear. Don't you worry about me. I'll be all right.
Yeah,
Now
I
I
think.
start to yawn about 10:30, so bear with me on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
front. But
I
the back
got I
feels
got
good.
a clock on it. I got a clock on it. I think is it flu B is going around like it's going around up down here.
I don't know. This was
Know a bunch
a
of people that
particularly
have had
nasty
it.
cold, very thick and sticky, and this was a nasty cold, nasty, nasty.
Yeah.
I know a
I don't
bunch of
get
people. I
tested
guess
and shit like
yeah,
that.
it seems like down here, like flu B is leading to complications. Like they'll go through the flu symptoms, but then they end up with like pneumonia as a secondary effect and a
Yeah,
bunch of other things. So I don't know if
Walter
that's
had
going
both
on or.
A and B this year. A and
Wow.
B. A was worse. I think he had a double ear infection to coincide with A. They both sucked though.
Yeah, that's good. So it's officially summertime up there, where y'all are at. Kind of, latitude, longitude, where you're at, Tim. It's like what, like New York City-ish?
It's a good question. I think we're actually pretty close to New Hampshire. I'm gonna look that up right now.
It's about to
Yeah.
get super
While
hot
you're
around
doing
here.
that,
It's going to be hot, high 90s next week, starting on Sunday.
yeah, I talked to my sister today. There, she was on her way to Maine to Wells Beach, gonna be in Algonquin for the weekend, just
Oh,
like a
you're
little
not coming up
getaway.
this year, huh?
Oh
No, I
man.
am. What do you mean?
What? Well, we weren't invited, so we're confused.
We haven't seen
I'm
Nate on
gonna.
his last 6 trips to New England, so I wouldn't count on it this time either.
That's not true. That's not true. I made a trip last year specifically for the draft to see
Oh, that's right.
y'all.
That's right.
And then, but yeah, you guys have not come to see me in Maine when I have a house on the beach and you can take the day, drive in, have something out of the cooler that's an alcoholic beverage, and then leave or sleep on the
It's
beach if you want to.
it's awkward to show up at a house you're not invited to. Like it's just not something
It's a
I'm
bit
comfortable
odd.
doing.
It is odd.
Typically, it's someone says, "Hey, come visit," and then I will come visit their house. I try not to cold call vacations.
Well, you're both welcome. You're both
Thanks,
welcome to.
pal.
There isn't room to sleep unless you want to sleep with me. But you're more than welcome. Come up for the day. We can go get lunch. I'm down with that. Or
Love it.
just hang out on the beach, whatever y'all want to do. So yeah,
Love it. Definitely
if we want to
should
plan
hook
that,
up.
we
Yeah.
we should. All right, so we'll do the layup line. So we'll start with the finals. Pacers force a game 7, going to game 7 on Sunday. How's everybody feeling about the Pacers? Do we think it's going to be the Pacers? Do we think it's going to be OKC? I think it's OKC in a landslide, honestly. I don't think they can. It's at home, obviously, for them. I don't think the momentum for Indiana winning game 6 to force a game 7 really helps them. But what are your thoughts, Chet?
My thoughts are it reminds me of the Celtics series. Before Tatum was injured, like it just felt like we were doing great, and then Tatum's injured, we lose that game, we win the next one, it feels like we're doing great, and then all of a sudden it was like, nope, clearly the other team at that point became dominant. What I want though is the Pacers to win, if I had to
Yeah,
choose. But I do think you're right. I think it's OKC. I don't think it's close.
yeah. Wally, what do you
Yeah,
think?
I'm probably in the same boat. I think the best player typically steps up in these situations. The best players in OKC, and that's not particularly close. My heart wants Indy. I think they're currently the better team. They're playing the best basketball, I should say. And if all things are clicking, um, I mean, even their bench looks good. Well, I mean, what has what's his name? The Mc what off the bench that who am I thinking of?
McConnell,
Nate, the what?
TJ
McConnell, boy, yeah,
McConnell.
well,
Yeah,
he's had a good series. Um, yeah, I still think that the best player wins, and I think Shea steps up and has a huge game 7, and they pull it off. I don't want that though.
I don't either.
yeah, I'm kind of torn. I like you said, you mentioned TJ McConnell. I love watching him play. He's kind of a spark plug for them off the bench. Uh, I think they don't utilize him enough. But I just don't. I don't want to see Indiana win. I don't. it's not they're deserving of it. They're not deserving of it. I think they probably have the deepest team, maybe not the best team yet. They're still young, even compared to OKC, even though OKC is technically the youngest team in the NBA. But yeah, I think I want to see OKC win it. They don't have much to root for down there or up there from my perspective in Oklahoma. So I hope they win. It'll be nice. Win on their home court as well. I think it would be a tragedy for them to lose on their home court in a game 7. So yeah. The Raphael Devers trade, Wally. How do we feel about that and how it went down?
I have you guys. I think my opinion of how the Red Sox are run is pretty well documented in this podcast. I refused to wear their gear for about a year and a half. I felt like they're so poorly run. This is another extension of that. I do not have a problem with them trading Raphael Devers. I do think he was a bit of a clubhouse cancer. Having said that, they should get a heck of a lot more than the bag of balls and package of big league chew that they ended up getting. Like we just gave up a 30 and 100 with a 300 average year in and year out, and we gave them away for pennies on the dollar. You cannot convince me that's a good business move. It's another continuation of, think about this, in the last 5 years, we traded away Mookie Betts, and we traded away Raphael Devers. 2 premier players in a league that you need the premier players to win. It doesn't make sense in any level to make that trade without getting did you see who the best the Giants' best player in the minor leagues is a big, hard-hitting first baseman? Boy, couldn't we use one of those, right? Why couldn't we get that guy instead of another fucking outfielder when we already have too many outfielders without enough at-bats? It doesn't make any sense. It's just, I think the Red Sox are poorly run. They continue to jack prices up and pull money out, and then they're sending money elsewhere, looking for another franchise in another league, and they're not focused on the Red Sox. I'm done with it.
Yeah, it does seem a little awkward and weird. I don't know even why. Okay, you don't want prospects. Let's get some future capital. Let's get some future draft picks. Like, something. I just don't understand how you feel like that's a trade of equal value. Just looking at it, and like to be the person that spearheads the negotiations for that and then the execution for it. I just don't understand how you maintain your job, to be honest with you. It's baffling to me. What do you think, Chet? You were the one that pointed it out to us after.
No, I think the Red Sox, what I see is they're Patriots wannabes. To Wally's point, Raphael Devers, a bit of a locker room cancer. But what the Red Sox don't do, which the Patriots did do, was develop their own team to the point where you could let go of someone like that and give someone else a chance to step up. And I guess a lot of people would have thought Campbell, I think his name is, would have been the guy to step up, but they just sent him back to the minors. It's just like a train wreck at this point. And to Wally's point, they're jacking up prices, and it's very poorly run. They're trying to show like just being a part of the Red Sox organization is such an honor, but in order to make that happen, you have to win, and you have to be good ownership and show that the players that are there are valued by you, and they're doing a piss poor job of that. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, there's speaking of the prices, my sister and I were talking about going to see a baseball game, and she was just like, can't do it because of the kids, it's too expensive. And she's just like, let's go see a Lake Monster game at the minor league team there in Burlington.
When you guys were in Maine.
Yeah, we could do
Dogs
that.
are a blast up in Portland.
I was telling her, like, kind of one of my bucket lists is to go to a baseball game at every park. And doesn't matter who's playing, just like one of the best games that I went to was the Cleveland Indians games before when they were the Indians and not whatever they are now, Guardians, I think. But it was on the field there that's right on the lake, and like it was a evening game. So we were there when the sun was up and the sun went down, and it was just nice to be on the Great Lakes and overseeing that, essentially that landscape, and then watching baseball, having a beer in my hand, it seemed so Americana, like
Right.
nostalgic. It was just great. And to do that now with a family, like I just don't. It's ridiculous. At least for sure, from the perspective of Boston and New York, I'm sure the prices are jacked up. It's the same if I were to go to Dallas Cowboys Stadium and watch them. One, I don't want to pay for the ticket because I don't like the team. But if I were to go in there, the concessions alone, it's like $20 for a beer, man. Like, that's a lot.
So
It's like
Nate, real
$100 and
quick,
something dollars for a 6 pack.
before you move on, Nate, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. What you just said, one of your sort of bucket list things is, my dad actually did. He's been to every single
Oh yeah.
league baseball. There's a big article about him in the paper in Boston. He went to every single Major League Baseball, whatever field, arena, whatever you
Stadium.
call it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
he's seen the Red Sox playing every single one of them.
What's
So
his favorite?
Yeah, what
I
should
want to
ask him.
say, if I were to ask him, I'd say Baltimore, not because of the city of Baltimore, but just the whole atmosphere in
Mhm.
Baltimore. So I think he might say that, but he's got a lot of different ones for different reasons. But yeah, he did
Yeah.
it. It's pretty
So
cool.
he's been to like uh I can't remember the park, but where where the Giants play, where Rafael
Yeah.
Devers now plays.
Is it Comerica? Or
I think so, yeah. I wanted to say Candlestick. I think that's what it used to be, but
It
now
used to
with
be
naming
Candlestick.
rights, yeah. That'd be pretty cool because then you see the McCovey Cove, and I just want to see where was Barry Bonds hitting them bombs, man, like when he was playing with them. But yeah, I'd definitely love to see that. And I'd love to see again when new stadium is your dad like when a new stadium's built, is he like, oh, I gotta go?
Oh, it's his first thought. Like
That's pretty cool.
he does it with football too. He doesn't have the same record in football, but as soon as LA, the football, he wanted to go there, number one. Then COVID, of course, and then all the things after that. But the Patriots had, I think, two games.
Uh-oh. He froze up. Dang it. All right, you guys are still with me?
I'm with you.
All right.
yes, sir.
Wally's still with me. All right, we'll move on to the Lakers. The sale of the Lakers. You froze up there, Chet, for a second. You froze up again. I like the look though. All right, so the Lakers were sold, Wally, for $10 billion, reported ten
What a
billion dollars
profit.
to the same guy that owns the Dodgers. How do you feel
Yeah.
about the Lakers being controlled by a guy that he has basically created a monster over there on the West Coast with the Dodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish the Red Sox were owned by a guy like that. He's willing to spend the money to put a good product on the field. He's a passionate fan first who happened to buy his favorite sports teams. Like that's exactly who I want owning all the teams I root for. As for like, I'm impressed. Jerry Buss bought the team for what $67.5 million in '79, and they just
Yeah.
sold with a valuation of $10 billion. I mean what
Pretty
an
decent
investment.
investment.
Geez,
I mean,
that's a pretty
honestly,
good turnaround.
the Buss family could go and buy probably 2 more NBA franchises with that money if they wanted to.
Well, it's not straight. Like they had given, like I saw the details of the deal, and they had bought out like 24% a few years
Yeah.
back, and they kind of basically swapped. So the Buss family still owns a percentage of the Lakers. They're just not the controlling. They're not
Yeah.
the majority owner
The
anymore.
majority interest, yeah.
All I say is hats off. Like I think that it's a valuable franchise. They own their arena, unlike the Celtics. They're one of the biggest franchises in all of sports. That is the biggest sale ever for a franchise worldwide, and I think it's justified. It makes a lot of sense to me. They wouldn't pay that much if they weren't making that much.
Yeah, the Lakers are a global brand. I like that there's a guy with that mentality now in the NBA because I think he'll come. He when it comes to player owner bargaining agreements, he'll bring some knowledge to the table and want to change some things and want to add some things. I think also hopefully he was the first guy in the major leagues to do deferred payments to his players, and I hope that will somehow make its way to the NBA to make again keep somebody with a team on a $300 million contract, but you're paying them for the next 20 years. Like, I don't know why, more teams won't want to do something like that. So I think there'll be more of that sprinkled in with an owner, a majority owner that has a bigger voice like him. And I'm happy for the Lakers franchise. Like, it's great that they have somebody that is willing to, not just on the player side, but the personnel side. Like, I'll spend the money to bring the smartest people in to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And then again, when they don't make the right decisions or they make the wrong ones, then I'll fire them and go find the next smartest guy. Because what we do know is that super smart people want to work for even smarter people. And when you find those people and hire them, like, you attract that level of intelligence, that level of tenacity, and they want to be a part of that. So
Nate, that was
Yeah,
articulate, and I like it. I just want to say one thing, just as a fanboy. Fuck the Lakers. That's all I have to
well
say.
said. Well said.
well said.
Thank you,
I
Wally.
think this guy's similar to the Celtics owner in that they're not really investing their own money here. They own these giant investment firms where people like it's like you buy a stock, you pay them money, they invest it for you. So it's similar to the Celtics owner the new Celtics owner in that regard. And that's how he's made all his money. Whether that translates into being a good owner, I don't know. We'll see, right? I don't know.
Question. Are there any teams in any sport that are owned by the people?
The Green Bay Packers.
Yep, that's the only one.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there any notable differences between that and other teams that are owned by the people you're talking about?
The Green Bay Packers do a better job developing quarterbacks and keeping the newest draft pick on the bench to develop better than any other team does. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's run like a true corporation where there's a panel or a board of trustees that make the decisions, and there has to be a majority vote, and decisions are made that way, as opposed to the guy that owns it making the final decision. There might be a panel that still chimes in, and gives
That's more of an
opinions, but
advisory board. Yeah.
Do you
that's
think
an
do you
advisory
think
board.
that's a better model for professional sports teams?
I think there's pros and cons to both, honestly. I'd argue that the Green Bay Packers are a little bit slower in making decisions because of that, and kind of waffle and go back and forth. And like, there's probably a hesitation, not a hesitation, but like, oh, let's table this discussion and we'll move on to the next topic, and then we'll revisit it at our next meeting. Like, as opposed
Yeah,
to,
but I think
no,
I think there's
want
less
this
risk as well, right? In that, like, you can see what happened to the Lakers towards the end of what's the name's getting old there.
Bus,
Yeah,
Phil Jackson,
the Raiders.
Oh, Al Davis?
Al Davis.
When Al Davis is getting old, and like you have these really geriatric owners that have full control of their team, whereas with a
Yeah,
board,
Jerry
at least you're
Jones.
held. Jerry Jones, is a great example. At least with a board, you're being held accountable by a multiple of people. It's less easily manipulated, perhaps. I don't know if that's the case, but I think it's business, right? I think this they're running it like a big business model because sports are big business. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
But ultimately, I mean, sports is about it's about winning, which is about pride. You want to have pride in your team. You want to, and so it's almost like the spirit of the thing is really what you're after. And it seems like teams that are owned by the fans, so to speak, as opposed to owned by, a fat cat who's just looking to,
Yeah,
seems like there might be some benefit there. I don't know
I
anything.
agree.
I'm just wondering.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I would love nothing more than to buy some shares of the Boston Red Sox or the Celtics or something along those lines, even if it's only symbolic. Like,
Yeah.
I could not agree with you
Yeah.
more.
Isn't that on the table, by the way, in Boston? I'd heard on WEI for multiple times that the Red Sox were thinking about doing that. Is that no longer a thing?
I wish they would, and we could build a conglomerate and drive those bastards out of Boston. I want John Henry gone. I want him out of here. I don't want to ever see John Henry's face again.
What if Wally, and I don't want, again, I'm not a baseball expert, but what if he took all the money they saved, from the Devers trade and actually spent it at the trade deadline to make them better.
Yeah.
Would you change your mind then?
You're right. If they will, I will eat my hat on this podcast. I will go get my Boston Red Sox hat. I'll get ketchup on it. I'll cut it up and I'll eat it. That's how likely that is to happen.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. Like, and I don't know that well, but like, man, that sucks. If they're gonna trade him, and then just do nothing with that money, and then jack up the prices. Like, how long do they think we're idiots? Like,
we keep coming back. We keep coming back. Yeah, but here's the problem, and I feel kind of guilty in doing this. Is that this ownership has also brought 4 championships to the Red Sox since they've owned the team. I mean, how much can we complain? You got to give them a little bit of latitude. I just feel like we've been giving them a lot of latitude, and they're raising the prices and not investing in the team.
Yeah. And that's
well, even when they do invest, which they did in free agency, right? They went out and got Berkman, but he's a third baseman who we just signed our third baseman to a huge contract. So logistically, what does that say to the guy that we just signed that's been on the team? And then it just a total mismanagement, in my opinion. So, All right, sorry, we beat that horse enough.
We did.
So
talking about cloud seeding?
Huh?
I said we're talking about cloud seeding now.
Oh no, we got a couple more. Don't worry. Don't rush the process. Are we ready for some football? It's the dog days of summer. Are we ready to start talking about some football?
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, Vegas trip is still on the table. Still waiting for an update. Probably when I sell my house, I will buy a ticket and potentially get a suite for X amount of days that might house 3 to 4 of us, or at least sleep us if we're gonna sleep in the city that never sleeps. So just saying, it's still out there. And I think I might pull the trigger on it, even if it's just me. I don't mind doing things by myself.
God, I would love to. More than you know. More than you know.
Well, you got between now and the beginning of September, end of August, beginning of September. You got enough time to go on a family vacation and purchase a ticket to fly out there to Vegas. All right, enough on that. Or do you want to comment? Go ahead and comment on it, Chet.
No, I was done.
All right, still waiting. Okay. Do you guys know who Anne Burrell is? And the fact that she passed away this week.
The chef.
Famous chef. Been on a bunch of cooking shows. I'm a big fan of like Chopped and Chopped for Kids, all kinds of different shows on Food Network. But anyway, I don't know all the details I read about it. They said paramedics were called, police were called, and she was found unresponsive. But no other details have been put out, and I haven't searched because, who knows what really happened. But anyway, she was on the same level of Anthony Bourdain. She was probably on the same level as Anthony Bourdain, just a well-renowned chef. Yeah. In the chef world, absolutely. In the chef world, absolutely.
I don't. Maybe in like not worldwide. Like I think Anthony Bourdain was a bigger he was a common name. I'm not a huge fan of the cooking shows. I know Anthony Bourdain. I didn't know her outside of the stories about her death and kind of the details around that.
Okay. Well, anyway. All right. So
I'm sorry for her loss. I'm sorry for her family's loss. It was traumatic. I feel for her and her family. I feel for her family. The details are starting to leak out, and I just feel for her family.
Was it drugs or suicide?
I feel weird talking about this. It doesn't feel right, but I heard there were a bunch of pills found on the ground around her and stuff like that.
Okay. I'll read up more on it, but I just didn't. Listen, anything else?
I expect you to come to this podcast prepared. So if you're going to talk, I want you to develop your own opinion. I don't want you to just regurgitate headlines.
I just wanted to say
this prepared.
I just wanted to say I really liked her as a chef. I liked the content that she was the stuff that she was doing, and she'll be missed in the food world for sure. That's
All right.
all.
I'm just giving you a hard time, man.
Yeah, I bet you are. You like that, don't you? All right. So, does anybody have anything else that they want to briefly talk about that could be considered a layup? No.
You hit all the good ones. You hit all the big ones that I want to talk about. Like I said, I do want to delve into it, but I think it's a bigger conversation. The budding war in Iran,
Oh,
and the implications it may have for us. But
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about that. We'll talk about that after Rainmaker. So let's talk about Rainmaker. Oh, also, I mean, I know we're recording kind of, but if you guys, my thought is, I like the Sean Ryan show. He puts out a lot of content. He offers to allow anybody to use that content and wants that content spread across, the internet specifically. I'm not saying every topic that we do, it comes off of the Sean Ryan show, but a lot of the topics that we've done in the past, I've watched or gotten information from his show specifically and quoted that and plugged it and said this is where I got the information. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. I know that there's a bunch of bloggers and content out there that are like, one of the ones that I specifically like is New Age Rock Stars. I think New Age Rock Stars. They are a content creation podcast-ish YouTube channel that does nothing but they review Star Wars series, they review Marvel movies, but they even review an Easter egg like the trailers for upcoming movies. Just on that note, I'm not saying that we are a review board for like Sean Ryan's podcast, but I like the content that he puts out. I like talking about it. I will probably plug it, but maybe we want to do that for like one or two topics a month, maybe. I don't. But all right, Rainmaker, it's a company that does cloud seeding. We talked in the past briefly about cloud seeding specifically. I think I posted a video on our group chat that was you couldn't tell who it was because it was dark, but it was somebody it looked like the dark of night shooting off rockets into the sky. And by rockets, I mean it looked like it was something that you would see in a war-torn country, like somebody shooting some ballistic missiles like in their backyard off of like some sort of, again, military equipment. So we talked about that briefly, but this episode of the Sean Ryan podcast went well into that. And dang, I did not put his name in the kid's name. I have everything about him except his actual name.
Augustus something.
Augusta Giovanni or
something like that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. So he's actually from New England. He's from Stamford, Connecticut. He's 25 years old. The brief history on cloud seeding. Cloud seeding's been done or was created in the 1940s. It's been used since the 1940s. It was kind of fine-tuned in 2017 in Idaho, where again the big technology boost that helped it be proven was different types of radar being used at the same time to prove essentially that there's moisture in the cloud. That was one radar, and then also that we turn the moisture into rain or precipitation, and then thus could record what was falling on the ground. So that's essentially how it was proven to work specifically. Right now, the company Rainmaker is on a small scale. Small scale is they operate in most of the West Coast states, and in some foreign countries, which isn't technically small scale, but the way that they seed clouds and create rain is on the small scale to where they're trying to essentially dump rain into an aquifer or into the rain table, or saturate the soil in an area where that saturation goes into an aquifer, or like a dammed up area, or like a farmer's acreage. So on that essence, or in that sense, they are still small scale because they can accurately make it rain over like an area between 10 to 100 miles, which is kind of broad, but it's precipitation falling from the sky, so you can't really, direct exactly direct where it's going to rain. So it's somewhat inaccurate, but their goal specifically coming straight from the CEO is that he wants to produce 10 million gallons of water, which would compare to the biggest desalination plant that operates currently in the world, if they can produce 10 billion gallons of water. And they've talked about the science behind it. Everything from like 93% of the sky, the clouds in the sky, 93% of them contain precipitation that does not actually fall on land. So if again, the science behind it is we're only seeing in our water table 7% of what is potentially precipitation that's out there. There's moisture in the sky. Now, sometimes it rains. A lot of that moisture could go into the ocean. It does rain a lot. There isn't any math on specifically does that cloud just dissipate and the precipitation evaporates and doesn't actually fall. There isn't any scientific data backing that up, but what they're also successful at is snowpacking and snowpacking enhancement. It's easier to make it snow than it is to rain, because if it's a certain temperature, then the cloud itself is cold enough for ice crystals to form, and then all the ice needs to do is fall from the cloud, and then it creates snow and then normally if the cloud's cold enough for the ice to crystallize, then obviously the temperature on the ground or below the cloud is cold as well. So that's a better environment as far as making precipitation, so it's easier to make snow. And then again, when you create snow, obviously in the winter months, it creates a snowpack, but also that snowpack itself can stop and prevent avalanches from happening, because it hardens the snow, packs it down into an ice compact, and it makes it more stable, as opposed to if it snows and there's light snows and dustings, and those don't pack down hard enough, so it doesn't create a stable platform for the shelf of the snow. So having said all that, there is also I really was super like nerded out by a lot of the information that was in that. One specific information was that the UN specifically reports that there's 2.2 billion people without water, or they have some sort of severe shortage that cannot sustain a water supply. Again, if there's a way for you to create rain and help those people that don't have those 2.2 billion, there's no reason, again, for scientific purposes. And throughout the episode in the podcast, they talk about the do's and the don'ts. But I think it's something that should be considered and executed if it benefits the mass of the population throughout the world. And who doesn't need more water? How would we not benefit from more water, depending on the season, depending on the climate, etc. There's still a lot of science behind it, and I think from the science, they've developed a lot of regulations that allow for certain amount of precipitation to be created, and only in certain areas. But there were obviously, through that, I think Wally, you brought it up in the group chat that it seemed he was super comfortable. Like, obviously Sean Ryan wasn't protesting anything. He's not like, sitting in front of the picket line and trying to defend his morals and how he's doing this, and the fact that it could change weather patterns across the world, etc. So he did seem comfortable, and there weren't a lot of pushback on the answers to questions. But I think it was mostly because this is a knowledge-based interview where a lot of people don't know about it, so the knowledge needs to be pushed out, and then people can form their own opinion. So having said that, who wants to go first as far as how they feel about this whole scientific experiment? Go ahead, Chet. You got your hand up.
Oh, raise my hand.
Like the hand up,
Unpopular statement. I don't listen to Sean Ryan, but I do read. I refuse to read anything other than peer-reviewed articles, which means scientific methods were employed in order to write this article. When you write the article, someone then tears it to shreds, redoes it, so by the time it's published, you can pretty much feel like this makes sense. So, Idaho, Project Sierra, 1947 is the first time that they did it. It was mostly about farming, and it had a lot to do with warfare, which makes sense. World War II, 19, that was a terrible time in the world. But they were thinking like, okay, how can we handle farming, but also maybe do like weather war? And then it became outlawed. So then you look at something called silver iodide that they shoot into the clouds, and it created those like racing stripes in the crowds and in the clouds, and then it made people believe it was working, and it might. The ultimate answer right now is it might actually work. The problem is like, is it causing other issues? Which is that's life. You solve one problem, it probably causes a different problem. That's how things work. And so when I read about it, it's the science around it is faulty at best, but there's a really good chance it actually works if we can find a way to refine it to the point that we can truly help the people Nate was talking about, which I would love. I'm all in favor of that. I'm all in favor of cloud seeding. If we can help farmers, help all of us do all these things. Nate, I'm assuming you could hear everything I said.
Yeah.
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 So I'm thinking that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know the guy you're talking about, Nate, and that's my fault. I just decided to go read, but I was like, man, there's a real chance this thing is legit. It's just going to take some little bit more time. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, the thing that you talked about as far as the racing stripes, like there's a misconception that when you look up to the sky and you see that, it is part of cloud seeding, or it's part of the geoengineering that he was talking about in the podcast. But in all honesty, most times when you look up and you see it, that's the condensation trail from the jet itself. It's no chemicals at all. It's just a condensation trail.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So I'm sorry, I have to say I understand that. But the pictures I'm looking at are the ones from above the cloud that show like on the actual cloud that shows it actually is effective and it actually works. So the silver iodide then draws in the particles from the rain. I mean, from the ice that creates ice, which then could create snow or rain depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
With the bigger issue, of course, being that like the environment works the way that it does. So if you're in a cloud seed, you're hoping for luck that there are clouds in certain areas where you need those clouds because you can't control that part. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying, Nick, because I saw that too. Like a lot of people thought that
Yeah.
track thing or whatever it's called. But yeah, that's all just from an actual jet, like just flying around. But above the clouds, they saw it and they're like, "Oh my God, this might actually work." And I really hope it does, because that's the way that humanity solves like existential crisis is by figuring stuff like this out. And I want it to be real.
It is real. Like it is real. It's not make believe. It's real. It exists. I think, again, I thought it was funny in the interview because Sean Ryan he talks about like, when you talk to people about this, is it like, when Zuckerberg was testifying before Congress about how to, all the stuff with Facebook and how it works, and and he's talking to people that don't even know how to access their email. And he's like, do you feel like that when you're trying to talk to people about this and educate them? And I felt like Sean Ryan, just like me watching it, I'm learning more than I am, I didn't know anything about it, but the kid has a way of talking. But also, I thought it was funny because Sean Ryan was like, "What other questions should I be asking you about this stuff?" And like, there isn't really we still don't know. I think we do. I just think the general public isn't really educated on the ramifications of this or how it could change things. And I think when we hear, oh, you're making rain, like we think that you're making the cloud, you're making the wind to push the, yeah. And like that was one other thing. Like, who knew a 25, like it's not that big a deal if a 25-year-old is making it rain. Like most 25-year-old kids are making it rain. Like that's what they do. But I did think it was funny again because in there isn't really questions. He asked some very good questions. Like he asked, how is that silver iodide once it's tied to, the chemical compound in the water, how does it affect the soil? But he actually didn't ask the question, which I want to know. How does it affect the water? Like the water
Yeah.
is a very unstable ecosystem. Unstable as in like we could probably say most of our water on the ground is polluted in some way, meaning there's bacteria in it. The organisms that live in that water have built up a tolerance or have adapted so that it doesn't affect them. But there's still some of those bacteria
There's
are.
plastic in all our water too.
That's true. That's true.
In your
And
brains.
there's
In your brains.
yeah, and there's birth control, right? Birth control
Well,
hormones
so
are in there
and
too.
I thought the points he made about that were pretty salient when he was talking about like people are like I've been on a conspiracy theory kick lately from the perspective of I like to point laugh conspiracy theorists. And one of the more frequent ones I've heard lately are the contrails, right? Like the planes are dumping poisons on us, and they're intentionally making us infertile, and blah blah. I'm sure we've all heard various iterations of how terrible it is and what they're doing. And I thought he was very uh, I appreciated his perspective on that. Basically saying that like that's not the issue. If you really want to address a palpable issue, there's microplastics in all of our water. There's there's birth control in drinking water of all the major cities because they don't filter it out of our. I mean, it was really a really intelligent conversation where that
Yeah.
like it's actually having a determinable, measurable effect on the testosterone levels of males. Because they're drinking this water that's high in estrogen and all these other chemicals. I'm like, well, see, now that seems like something that we can actually do something about versus getting lost in the Jack Contrail conversation.
Yeah.
Listen, gentlemen, can we all agree we are not drinking that water?
Yes.
We'll
We are
edit that
not.
part out, right?
Yeah, we should because
No,
it did
I
not
like to
make
leave
the
those
point.
things in there.
It did not make the point.
Didn't land.
You know what I
Yeah.
don't think go ahead, Tim, please. I want to hear your perspective on this.
I had a range of thoughts on it. Like in the one side of things, obviously there's a felt need, right? And you have the technology, presumably, that can meet that need, and that is making water. I mean, it's the fundamental principle of life. We all need it. We'll die without it. So, when you're making the case for that, it's very solid. That's also the thing, and so I'm willing to say, hey, there might be some potential here, but I also think the way into the lead in for a lot of these new technologies is, hey, just look how many lives it will save. Look how much good it will do.
Mhm.
And then it sort of lures you in to adopting a technology. And then, only then, is the reality of the consequences sort of unveiled to you. And so I think that I had far more questions than I had answers in that interview. And I don't think that that's wrong. I think that the fact that we just don't know a lot about it. As a case in point, so he said it's 50 grams, and you go up into the cloud and you're gonna make it rain. It's like 50 grams of silver iodide. Well, it's like 25 paper clips, right? It's not very much. And he said in 80 years of studies, we've had no measurable effects on the soil. But admittedly, these are very small sample sizes. What happens if you 100x the silver iodide, which is completely reasonable number if you're expanding this to even nationally? And so I did ask AI, what would happen if you 100x'd the silver iodide content? And it was like it would have pretty devastating consequences on microflora, soil bacteriums, and things like that. So I think that we're getting caught up in the
Oh no.
Oh man. I was gonna
Right.
in
ask.
Michael
Oh,
Crichton's Jurassic Park. You're so obsessed, whatever that line is. It's very famous. So obsessed with it, they didn't stop to think if they should.
yeah. Oh, he's going back and forth.
He's
And
absolutely
so,
right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, let's extrapolate this. And I found a lot of irony in the fact that the example that he gave about the real problem is hormones in the water. Well, if we step back and look at what that example is, it was an example of us trying to solve one particular problem in one area, and it had unintended consequences that literally got into the water.
Yes.
So, who's to say that you aren't going to repeat that very same thing where you're trying to solve a problem in one area and downstream, nobody can see it yet, just like we couldn't see the hormones in the water. We have these downstream consequences that are perhaps far more devastating because it is the very drinking water. I have a lot of thoughts about it. Also, yeah, there's X number of clouds in the sky that have precipitation that aren't dropping rain. Well, perhaps there's a purpose for that we don't really understand. Perhaps there's other purposes that that they have an effect. Everything has an effect, and so the presumption is these are just this is a null effect. These clouds are just in the sky, no effect at all, and so we can just milk them for water. Well, how do we know they don't have an effect? And you can't figure that out really until you have widespread long-term studies of these things. So I would say I'm much more skeptical than I am positive about this. I do acknowledge the benefits of short-term localized rainfall, and if you could somehow limit the greed of mankind when he has the power in his hands to literally make rain, water, the most valuable substance on the planet, you say, there's a limit to how much money we want you to make off of that. It's like, I do not trust any human to be like, I've made enough money. I'm not going to. So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's a bit
You said
scattered, but
you just shared all the same concerns I think I said last week, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. There is no, and we got to understand the vehicle by which this is being communicated. It's the CEO of the company selling the product, right? So
right.
he doesn't want to find the flaws in the system. He
Yeah.
wants to say why it's the best in the world so that he can continue to benefit and profit off it.
Well, I think also, I'm not saying both of you do this, but I think that we all do it, right? Like Tim, you just you was a great example of what you did. You asked AI what the effect of 100x is to the soil, but you stopped when your answer or your question was answered. But again, when you talk about, or when we all agree, when technology helps us develop something, we talk about all the good that it's going to do. We don't necessarily think about the tertiary effects or the things that it'll affect and bring up as the after effects of that. But
Yeah.
to my point, did you ask AI, is there a chemical compound that we currently use that'll neutralize the silver iodide in the soil?
But
I did not
right,
ask
but
that.
then you're throwing chemicals on top of chemicals, and the same issues are going to persist. Like what are the long term? Sometimes the the medicine's worse than than the disease that it's used to cure, right? So if you just throw other chemicals on top of the silver iodide, what are the long term implications of having done that? Because again, as a species, we don't tend to think long term. We try to solve the immediate fire in front of us and don't worry about kind of everything else that's going on around it. I do think that the long term benefits to this is not even having to do with Earth necessarily. I think it's about terraforming, right? It's about finding an environment and trying to make it hospitable to humans. And I think that's where the ultimate goal is, so that you can terraform Mars or wherever the hell you want to go.
Or make it rain on Mars. Yeah, I agree with that. But
Interesting.
again, when we're talking about making it rain on our soil, when we yes, we want to talk about if we 100x the silver iodide, but when we talk about a pound of silver iodide will create 4 million pounds of water. Like that's a significant, that's a, if we look at it as a pro and a con, yes, the con outweigh the downside, or the byproduct, which is 40 million pounds of water, is that's a substantial amount of water. That's
Yeah.
not like,
Well,
and
yeah, it's true, but also a teaspoon of cyanide will kill 400 men.
how do you know
So,
that
I mean,
number, by the way?
I just made it up, but you don't know any different. I guarantee you
I mean,
don't
it
know.
sounds right. It sounds right, because I think you know the in Auschwitz or whatever, they were using like small little tablets, and they were
Yeah.
just vaporizing the tablets and
Yeah.
killing people. But yeah, I agree that again, most technologies that we use and start using at a frequent consistency, we don't understand the ramifications. And also, I mean, we're pretty young, Wally, as far as the our civilization on this earth is pretty young, and the way that we've developed everything from our science and technology to our health and interests, and also war itself. But I do think, again, you're right, we don't look at the long term because we don't understand, thousands of years, because that's like our children's children. We're trying to make improvements and make life better in the now. And yes, we should definitely consider how those decisions that we make, affect future generations. But I don't see how, again, I do believe that there's a smart person out there, not just AI. There is something that will neutralize the silver iodide in the soil, and it's probably not a harmful chemical. It could be something like, SPF for trees, something to that effect. But there's a lot of things out there, and Sean Ryan also talked about it, where he had an interview with somebody, and they had a scientific breakthrough on, like, it was something that you spray on plants, and it allows them to photosynthesis for an extended period of time, meaning I think photosynthesis ideally has to take place at 72 degrees or warmer. And if you can spray something on a tree and it photosynthesis in, just above freezing temperatures, then I feel like, as far as solving world hunger, like, if we can still have sustainable crops when it's close to freezing temperatures in environments, then we have now essentially doubled the yield of production that we can make in any type of, throw any crop out there that can feed the world. And I don't see why, again, we're not investing / trying to capitalize on things like that. But anyway, I agree with you what you're saying, Tim, as far as we should definitely consider, which we don't, and we're not. There's somebody that's creating an answer to the problem, and then there isn't somebody that's saying or telling them these are the problems, these are the additional problems that you're creating by solving this one within the production. So
I will say, in my exploration of what the good and the bad of this, is there a corollary where we had manipulated things on the land that people might have been saying a similar thing about? Or you can't do this because there are downstream consequences of it. Maybe something like GMO, like an intentional GMO, not just crossbreeding your snow peas or something, but intentionally genetically modified um, plants. And so, or even other things, crop rotation or something like that. Say, well, could you just see we're being caretakers of the land and changing the landscape in such a way, draining a swamp, doing this or that. Well, now are we just caretaking the skies? Are we just now moving from terrestrial to celestial, where we're now sort of implementing the same kind of ideas into the skies? So that was sort of the other side, like the angel on the shoulder, having that conversation. So I mean, I could see that too. I could make that. I could make that argument. Um, so uh, so I could see the good and the bad of it. I think what I don't trust, though, I don't trust men who have money on the mind. And I don't trust, I mean, is there any technology that promised riches to which any human said, I think we're going to wait on that? I don't think it's the time. I don't think so. And so, I think um, just like a man who is right in the heat of the moment and he's gonna sleep with a prostitute, he doesn't think long-term consequences. When you have money in front of you, you don't necessarily think about long-term consequences as much as people talk about, wanting to caretake the earth or whatever. Like, I don't know. You don't have my trust.
Yeah, and I think there are parallels all over the world right now. AI technology is another great example. Like, what are the long term? And I think this has been discussed. What are the long term implications of that, and how
Yeah.
scary can that be? Because there's a lot of really negative potential outcomes.
Mhm.
But I do feel like there are a lot of benefits, and if we can get down the environmental part of it, like I too understand the benefits to cloud seeding. And again, I do feel like the ultimate goal is being able to populate another world, another planet. Like, isn't that the ultimate? I think he alluded to that at times. We're terraforming Mars or whatever is ultimately. And so there's a definite benefit to it. I just feel
Yeah.
like we're a long ways away from realizing that benefit. And frankly, I know how these things go. We're going to do it wrong 10 times before we even knew we were doing it wrong.
Yeah. Another thought I had is, if this thing works locally and we're concerned about 100xing the silver iodide in the soil, for example, what if what if you just cloud seeded the same, 1,000 square acres for 10 years? And that would give the opportunity to replenish the aquifers or whatever. If you strategically do it in certain places, kind of like you're turning on the faucet of the sky in certain places, then you would have it localized. You would be able to replenish those aquifers or whatever, but also have a long-term study where it's also very limited in its reach. So I don't know if that is even possible, but that's what I thought of.
Well,
Well, I feel
they
like
said in the podcast they've been doing it in Colorado quite a bit, so you should be able
Yeah,
to tell for us in short
Yeah,
order.
you should be
Like,
able to
we'll
let
use
us
you as a
know.
bit of a guinea pig to find out what are the implications long term.
Yeah.
right.
There was also he talked about a lot of the science and the regulations, not necessarily the regulations, sorry, but the science and the production stuff is a lot of the data has come from China. And of course, not that we trust China 100%, but China actually credits their largest dam that they have in China. They credit at least 10% of the water that's in that dam to uh, cloud seeding specifically. So if we think about it on a scale of the largest dam and 10% of that water was created, I also think, like, when we talk about 100x, like the way that he explains that it's not an exact science, as in he can't see this cloud and then it rains exactly where they expect it to. So like the 100x of silver iodide, I feel will probably never be achieved, because he even said the cloud, once we seeded, the cloud could precipitate anywhere from 15 to 2 hours later, and that cloud could have moved again. And while it's precipitating, the area that it's covering, I don't think that we'd ever meet the 100x. You know what I mean? As far as the silver iodide and this, and that again, do we want to speculate on? Well, that'll never happen, but we'll deal with it when it does happen. No, but yeah, they're definitely, he should also be investing time and money into what offsets or what counters or neutralizes the silver iodide in the soil. And is there something that we could attach to the silver iodide? Because the only reason why the science behind the silver iodide is that its crystalline structure is very close to ice or water when it freezes. So that's why they use it, because it attaches easily and creates the ice crystalline, and then that thus makes it rain. So if there's another chemical compound that can do that is less harmful. And again, the iodide part is obviously what worries us, right? No one would be upset about more silver being in the soil, and then generations later we find some soil or find some silver
Yeah.
deposits, and
Well, I mean,
somebody gets rich.
silver is a known antimicrobial, and so is iodide. I mean, you put iodine in your water to kill the bacteria. We have in the hospital, we have silver coated catheters to prevent bacterial growth. So both of those chemicals, both of those things, not I don't know how they would act together in conjunction. I'm not a chemist, but individually they certainly do prohibit bacterial growth. And the microbiome of soil, you know, people smarter than me know more about that, but it's just my initial
Yeah,
concern.
healthy soil needs bacteria in it to thrive. Like, yeah, that's that's kind of just the gist of it. Like,
Right.
probably what you would have said, but I'm less intelligent, so that's what.
That works better. Yeah.
Let me see, what else did we want to talk about as far as this stuff. Oh, I thought that it was interesting when they started talking about terraforming, and of course, again, the science behind it, with not just terraforming, but to backtrack a little bit, with robbing Peter to pay Paul. I feel like if we seed a cloud that has precipitation in it, because there's 93% of the clouds that aren't dropping their precipitation on the soil in general, and it's just either evaporating or going out to sea and dumping out to sea. I feel like there's again a 93 more chances, so to speak, out of 100 to seed another cloud in an area that needs hydration. Uh, and again, I do wonder about the long-term effects of the silver iodide, just like anybody else. But I do think when we talk about, again, we talk about the wildfires that happened in Los Angeles. Well, if we were doing some cloud seeding before that, potentially the water runoff system, or the water catch system that the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, and the state of California were supposed to be developing to catch water runoff from snow melting in the mountains, or rain that would actually rain on the inner city area. The millions of dollars that they spent on that, they could have spent on cloud seeding, could have had a better product as far as gallons of water to help fight wildfires. Can't prevent wildfires, obviously. The other thing that was interesting, along with, again, the terraforming aspect of it, which I do agree with you, Wally, this is probably like a precursor. Like, if there's clouds in the atmosphere on any planetary body that we can see with a telescope, in the future, we should be, at a minimum, to start terraforming, we should be able to send drones or machinery there to start essentially cloud seeding and create some precipitation to start the terraforming process. But I do think the regulations exist for a reason within the states that are using cloud seeding. And also, we understand scientifically enough about the cloud formation and how, if we wanted, for instance, the desert in Arizona, if we wanted to actually cloud seed some of that, we understand that the particulates that are blown into the air from the desert in Arizona don't really have a global effect on clouds and rain throughout the world. We understand more predominantly that the dust particles from the Sahara Desert definitely have a global effect on weather patterns throughout the globe. So there's obviously they're not gonna try and terraform or cloud seed in that area, because the particulates are needed for global ramifications if that stops. So I think that moving forward, we're going to see some advancements, some different advancements in technology that are going to help. There'll be better radar to help find the precipitation. There'll be better radar to understand exactly how much rain is falling. And then I think also I want to say that they'll find a way to neutralize the silver iodine.
Well, there's another way to skin the cat too. Looking at desalination techniques, and which have been very successful, and the energy expenditure that goes into making that happen, it's getting more and more efficient. So, talking about water shortages, there are other ways to do it, ways that are perhaps less have less of war fog around them.
Well, again, the rain or the water has many uses as well, not just for drinking purposes. I mean, if you can create more hydroelectric dams, which electricity and the electric grid is something that's been an issue, across globally mostly. But if you can create more water that will run through dams and create more hydro dams, then again, as far as the water table or the soil being saturated, it'll help develop more saturation in the soil by damming up areas. And of course, we're not talking about damming up an area, that where it's the risk of flooding increases in certain in high density populations. But there's got to be a way to, again, if I can create the water, there's got to be a way to capitalize on it and a different number of ways, not just I can now, again, get the water to the 2.2 billion people that don't have it, but I can use it to create electricity to put on our grid. So it has a lot of uses. And I think that Wally's onto something with the terraforming, because it's like a precursor to that. We're like going to use this study to help terraform planets. But also, I thought it was interesting that they started talking about making things in space and production plants in space. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to any of that, but like that seems super. I'm really interested in talking about that, but it's probably another topic for another time. But I thought it was very, very interesting that they talk about specifically semiconductors. We know that Taiwan is a huge producer of semiconductors, but Samsung in general has a bunch of plants, in Texas specifically, not just America, and they make semiconductors at each one. And if they can make it at a lower cost out in space, like to me, it's mind blowing that somebody actually thought of that. Like, hey, let's create this little space station of our own out in space where we manufacture these conductors because one, it's already a clean environment. It's super clean. There's no gravity, so it doesn't really, it's easier to make certain geometrical and chemical compounds and structures in zero gravity. I just thought that was super remarkable, and I'm not smart. And when I hear people talk smart things, it gives me goosebumps.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, it happens sometimes when you talk too, Wally. So yeah, rain. Don't let the cloud seeding be confused with the geoengineering. The geoengineering is like kind of like climate cooling or like creating a cloud to reduce solar intensity, which in general, in my opinion, that's probably one, we probably know less about that than cloud seeding specifically as far as the ramifications and the things that it'll do to the world in general, not
That
just
terrifies me. Terrifies
Yeah.
me way more than the cloud seeding thing.
I agree.
Like create clouds.
Did you guys hear? Did you hear that the polar ice caps grew over the last 2 years?
That's not
I hope they
abnormal.
did. I hope they did.
They
You
did.
know what?
That's something I've
You
been
know
tracking
why
for a
they
while.
grew? You know why they grew, Wally? Because they geoengineered clouds over the caps to cool it down.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
you very well could be right. You
It
could
would
very well be
make
right.
sense, to be
But
honest with
it's
you.
weird because you hear all the narratives surrounding climate control and how quickly our climate's changing. And then I hear something like that. I'm like, well, that seems directly contradictory to everything I'm hearing.
Yeah. I don't know if I've said this here or not, but one of the chapters in the book that I'm writing is about the eschatological, which just means like the end times. You're familiar with that phrase, the end times. The end is near, the apocalypse, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The end times thinking is you can't understand American history without understanding the eschatological current that runs through it. It was built with that mindset, and it continues through to today. And so, I actually have a document on my email drafts running side by side. I have the failed predictions of the second return of Jesus. Like who's the Antichrist and who's the
Yeah.
beast and when's it going to happen and all these things all failed, right? And then running alongside that, I have the failed predictions of climate apocalypse. There's going to be nothing left in 2012. This is going to be gone, but this lake's going to be dried up. All of them failed. And the thing that's interesting is it doesn't matter in either category how many times you fail. Whenever someone comes out with a different prediction, it's gobbled up as if it's prophetic. And what is it? That tells you way more about what it does for us, the Americans. We are titillated by the apocalypse. It doesn't matter how many times it's false. We just want prophecy. We just want the imminence of the end because it gives us meaning and purpose and direction. And that's my
So
little.
is it healthy then?
No, I don't think it's healthy.
But if we need that to stay like engaged and have that hope and have that, like, couldn't you say there's a benefit to it?
No, I don't think that there is. I mean, you could probably find some benefit to it, but I think you could find much more benefit. It's like if a person's walking around anxious all the time that their doorknob's going to explode, then they're really primed for when that actually happens, and it could be useful in a very limited circumstance. But they could also spend their time opening up themselves to looking around how they can make the world a better place where they are right now, as opposed to sitting in the bunker with the beans and laying a shotgun across the lap, that's more from sort of like my side of things where Christians, a large contingent of Christians think that the end of the world is going to happen sometime before their next oil change. And and
The
all
next
that
3,000
means.
miles.
Right. So, but I do think that there is something eschatological in you cut American history we're going to bleed eschatology. And I could I'll need to shut up because I'm going to go into like a history lesson about the 19th century and how all of these eschatological cults and spin-offs and things like that came about. But I do think that for whatever legitimacy or lack of legitimacy climate change stuff has, I do think that it's infused with the American sentiment of the apocalyptic, which yeah.
But I do wonder for the vast majority of like the people that aren't necessarily inclined to feel passionately one way or another, to overemphasize the impact of something stirs people that you would not otherwise reach by just having a logical face to face conversation. I think, right? So if you say the extremes like, yeah, we're all gonna the temperature's going to go up 10 degrees and all the coastal places are going to be flooded. Well, Jesus Christ, I don't want that to happen. So like I'm going to start recycling. And like there's benefit to that, right? Well, I'm saying if you're the one preaching those causes, so I can see the risk reward.
Well, yeah, I can see your point. You also run the risk of losing legitimacy when your
Boy who cried wolf.
predictions don't come true. And I think we see that in other areas like medicine, um, with the COVID hype with the vaccines, and they do this or that,
Yeah,
and they didn't do any of that. And then I believe the net effect of that whole experience is the lack of trust in these organizations that beforehand had some pretty legitimate things to
yeah.
say and a position in our lives. So I think there's a lot of other factors that go into that, but I mean that's what I would say to
Well,
that
I
particular
hear what
point.
you're
I
saying,
think
but at the same time, you have two running lists on your computer of of examples, repeated examples of them doing the same things over and over and over again. So there's some benefit to it, right? I mean, it's effective to a certain degree.
You're right. I guess you're right. I mean, it is effective, um, and it makes you
I'm not
wonder.
saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I agree
Yeah,
with it.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying I
yeah.
understand what they're doing.
Right. I mean, it's effective. It sells, right? It sells,
It gets the
uh,
clicks. Yeah.
so to
yes,
speak.
yeah.
So to speak. Yeah. And it would be interesting to sort of dive into the psychology of that. Why that's the case.
Well, I got you on
Um,
that.
you got it, Chet. Go for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Illuminate us.
Not yet though.
Well, no,
Or
you guys all know it already. I'm not illuminating you at all. It's about purpose. So if you think there's an apocalypse or you think that global warming is going to do this, you're going to jump into something head first. It's going to become your
Yeah.
purpose. It's going to become what you believe in, which will lead to one group on this side, one group on this side fighting each other with signs, but it feels really good to make that sign and to be
It's a
like, I am
community.
making change.
Yeah.
I am part of this change. Um, and so that's where it's effective. If you sort of put out this idea that this is what's going on, and then you decide, you know what, my day to day is important to me, but I'm going to do something more, and it feels like you're doing something more, then
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You know,
going to be effective.
that's a good point. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the similarities between those two columns.
Yeah.
The in the Christian category, you have the end of the world is near.
Yep.
We need to get out there, make as many converts as we can, save them from the coming wrath. And it does provide purpose in solidarity. And you could just pick that up and put it down in the other category.
Mhm.
You have solidarity, like we need to be saved from the coming wrath of the sun. We need to make sure that everybody is on board with kind of our message. And so, yeah, I think it's a really good point.
I just think it's psychology. It's basic psychology. It's how we're built, right? And I try not to jump in anymore. I jumped in for a long time, and I'm one of those people who remembers like I was all in on something, only to learn later on like maybe I wasn't fully correct. And I think one of my personal things I'm proud of myself for is like, sometimes I can be wrong. And I'm one of those people that can admit maybe I was wrong on that. And I think that that does really help me. But certain people on those lines will never admit that. And at that point, to me, they're out of the conversation because they're no longer able to contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way. Once you get so locked into only one side, I think you're done. But for me, it was very painful to come out of that part because you're losing that solidarity with those same people that you built it with. It becomes very difficult. And so I'm in a place now, I'm pretty comfortable, feeling pretty good,
Pretty comfortable not caring about anything.
pretty comfortable being independent in my
Just numb,
thought.
comfortably numb. I think it's.
Oh, you guys are
Don't
saying
care
I'm
about
good
anything?
inside? Cool. No, I think
Hmm.
I think I'm at the point really where I look at things independently
Yeah.
of rather than like what the Democrats or Republicans or Christians or Catholics or Jewish people, regardless of what they all tell me to think. I feel pretty good at this point in my life of feeling independently, being able to look at things and then apply the scientific method, which is my thing. Which, by the way, Tim, Catholics, Christians do all the time. They do not want to be made fools of. So when you see like someone says, "Oh, it's a miracle," the Catholics apply the scientific method better than almost anybody.
We invented it.
Right? When it comes to was that a miracle or not? Was
Well,
that
I
a
don't know if it's
miracle
a
or not?
miracle, but Francis Bacon.
It's amazing to me how often you'll see something and you look at it, you criticize it, you
Yeah.
analyze, you scrutinize, you do everything. Like if someone says there's a tear that came from a statue, you're the first people like, fuck that. Nope. This guy over on 33rd Street over here came in there. We got the cameras. Like there is absolute truth to that. Like
Yeah, well, I think you're right, and this is a side point. I won't follow it, but um, the Enlightenment period, I think, is really overhyped, and
yeah.
the last vestiges of the Enlightenment exist in the church, and everywhere else is pretty much gone. so, so it's sort of like the last in, last out. But yeah, there are ways where the Enlightenment had some good ideas, great, good things, but it led to a lot of bad things, and I think a lot of those bad things still are dug in evangelicalism. And but anyway,
No, I get it.
I think it's interesting. Again, the end of days, whether it's a religious view or the end of days as it's something that's going to be induced by man specifically, whether it's a virus, war, whatever it is. And that's a it's a weird, those are two weird spectrums as far as a left and a right side. But I think when we think about when something bad happens, like if we just turn on TikTok and start scrolling and we see a video of, it could be police brutality or something, but we don't see who's around. We know there's somebody behind the camera. And I always wonder, in the military, I used to know because I was surrounded by people that I think would act and help and do something. And I feel like this panel, the people that I talk to on here, are those types of people where they would, if something happened, there was action that was needed, they would help. Their first instinct would not be to take out their cell phone and start recording. And I think inherently that is something that is, I guess I would correlate that action as in, if you're the person that takes out your cell phone and starts recording, that's kind of like, I don't know, one of the people that are saying, if we want to look at any think of anything throughout history where it was something that wasn't popular scientifically, something that wasn't proven scientifically. It was magic, it was witches, it was something, but let's burn them at the stake. Let's burn them at the stake. Like, so I feel like those people with cell phones are that voice that they don't know anything about it. They're there observing, and they don't particularly have an opinion, but just their observance of what's going on. And then now that they're going to put that out into the world, they're allowing an opinion to be formulated based off of what they're putting out into the world. And again, I think there's two types of people. You're either the person that pulls out the cell phone, or you're the person that's going to offer help before you go to your cell phone and start recording. And it's just, I don't know. I try and I kind of correlate the two things together. There's two different spectrums with the religion and war or global pandemic or however that whatever you want to say is on the other side. And then again, those two types of people are the same. There's either one that's going to help, and I feel like for what it's worth, the person that's going to help, they're probably the person that's on the religious side. You know, they might not even believe that the end of times is coming because the Bible says it, but they're that type of person that's going to help when things are going on, and they're going to act in the moment and not think about what's actually going to happen after this, and then after that, and then after that, and then I feel like the others, the people that pull out their cell phones and start recording, they're the ones that are contributing to the 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 gross negligence that will ultimately contribute to like an end of days, if that makes sense, because they're not trying to help, they're not trying to fix something. Does that make sense?
Your concept makes
think
sense.
so.
I take significant umbrage with the assumption. I think that there's a lot of people who are religious, and based on that religion, they are by definition followers. And so that will lead to a diffusion of responsibility. This is what's supposed to happen. God says so. So why would I step in? That's not my role, right? So I think a lot of people who are not religious are the ones who are like, wait a minute, this is not okay. I think there's a lot of people who are religious who do amazing things day to day on a daily basis to help people. But I don't really agree with what you just said as far as those who are not religious are most likely to like take out their cell phones. I'm not saying that people who are religious are more likely. But I am saying that when it comes to religion or even the military, Nate, there's a part of follow your orders. Things are as they are. And where I value thinking independently, even though that's incredibly difficult, but I think it takes an independent thinker in a moment that seems like it's groupthink. It takes that independent thinker to make a change. That diffusion of responsibility thing takes someone who goes, and Nate, you're one of them, Nate, by the way. I respect you for this. You would not let something go. If you saw like an injustice being done, you'd be the first one to step in. You personally would, but not everybody would. And I don't think that's a result of being religious or not religious. I think that's a result of character. So
I
I
always
guess
wa- I wasn't saying they were the same people. They're on the same spectrum, but on different levels, if that makes sense. Like I don't think that everybody that is willing to help is religious,
Mhm.
because again, I know people have come up to me personally. I've worked at multiple gyms, and I've been involved with religion on a spiritual basis, on just like, let's do a Hail Mary because we're about to go into something that we don't know what's going to happen. So I've been multiple levels of religion have been introduced into my life specifically, but I thought it was telling, because after all that, I had a friend that was going to the gym, and I asked him about church and how he liked it and all this stuff. And he's like, I really like it. I like the sermon. I like the pastor. That's really the message, but I'm not sure if I relate with the people that are there, that are doing the same thing as I am, listening to somebody talking. And I asked him, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I don't know. I don't really see them as my equal or my lesser, or I'm better than them. I don't know if we're the same people. And that's okay. But he also said, I feel like I have a better relationship with the people that I work out with at the gym than I do with the people at church, even though we share that same bond as far as religion is concerned. And I thought that was interesting because, again, when I think of religion, I think of, a gathering of people, like a symbiotic, not necessarily mind, but a symbiotic thought, a symbiotic, we all want the same thing. We all understand the message that's being, perceived. I shouldn't say perceived, but that's being talked about. But I guess the change to that is that how many times have you heard a certain voice, or excuse me, a certain verse in the Bible be told to you as one thing, and also not only that, but their interpretation of that verse, and then someone's interpretation doesn't negate what the last person that you said, interpret that same voice, but it gives you a different perspective on that verse and what it actually means. I feel like, that's kind of the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, the same. It's like the same type of person, but they're on the different team, so to speak.
Yeah.
And their ability to act or engage is irrespective of their belief or unbelief, essentially.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. That's what I'm talking about, character, right? And ultimately, I mean, like the four of us, I actually truly believe any one of us, we see an injustice happen, it's right in front of us, and we could choose to take out our cell phone to record it or do something. I think we all do something.
That reminds me of something that I don't remember his last name. It was in 8th grade. Patrick something. He was
Chase?
like what's that?
Chase, I'm just giving out a name. I know a Patrick Chase.
I don't think it was
Chase.
Patrick Chase. He was a guy. He was like a Kurt Cobain guy. I think he went to Tilton Prep.
Wally knows him. Yeah, Pat Hughes.
Yes.
Wally knows
Yeah,
everybody.
Pat Hughes.
Wally
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
everybody. He was a
Yeah, I
long
don't know
distance
who
runner
this guy
too.
is.
Like he was
What?
cross country runner. He ran cross country, didn't he, Wally?
Did
He
he?
did for a couple of years, for a year or
But
two. Yeah.
but he went to Tilton Prep, didn't he?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, this guy I'm
Nope,
thinking of went to
he
Tilton
He was
Prep.
ended up
in
getting
he was in our
expelled.
Spanish class, wasn't he, Wally? With Levine, he was in our Spanish class.
He and I took many classes. English. He was in a bunch of classes. But
Okay.
if
So,
you're
Tim,
somebody who went to Tilton School, that's not
Tim,
him.
you think
Okay.
it's Eric Bitetto, maybe?
No, his name was definitely Patrick, and
It's
he was in
Patrick
8th
Hughes.
grade,
It's probably Patrick Hughes.
and then he went to Tilton Prep. I don't know. I've never saw the
Oh
guy.
yeah, no.
So, anyway, I used to remember after 8th grade biology, the class ended for the day. I was in the hallway and he made a beeline for me, and he had his like Kurt Cobain hair and those baggy jeans on. He's like, "Tim, just remember, if you ever get into a fight and you're losing, if you pee on the other guy, you win the fight."
Words
So-
of wisdom.
So, I mean, I've never been in a situation that I've been in a fight, nor do I think that I would be able to get it together to urinate on the other guy. But it just made me think of that when you were talking about that, Nate. The people who are man of action, like what would that be?
That's a man of action right there. Also, Tim, I'm just gonna say one word, and if you can acknowledge that you know this one, that it's the right guy. Nunchucks.
Oh man, I don't know what you mean.
Okay, because Pat Hughes was expelled for nunchucks, I think.
As a
Oh.
senior, though. He was a senior.
I thought it was in middle school.
He should have
No,
known
shit,
better
no.
by then. He should have
No,
known
he got
better.
Yeah.
expelled. He was like a senior. At the very least, a junior. No, I'm pretty sure it was a senior. Like it was well along in high school careers. We took many classes together. Yeah, good dude.
He was
Okay.
he,
You all
he
did,
was
too.
expelled
we were all
because
in
of
the same goddamn
nunchucks?
classes. Our school wasn't that big.
Yeah, no, I remember having him in some of my classes too, and
No,
I remember
I
he
remember-
was our junior year. He was hanging out with seniors and probably doing drugs. I don't
Yes.
really know, but
Oh, 100%
I remember
doing drugs. We did
fifth grade.
for one of our English classes. We did a video project.
Was it-
I think it was for Doc. I think
That
it was
was
for
Doherty, yeah.
Where we had to film. We had to film a movie, and in typical Pat fashion, Pat was very intelligent, brilliant kid,
Yeah, he
really
was.
really intelligent, one of the smartest kids that are in our grade.
Yep.
but he was a procrastinator and put things off. So I was absolutely a procrastinator. So he called me like the day before it was due, and he came down to my father's house one day, and it was over school vacation, and he came with his senior crew. Then we were probably a freshman or a sophomore, and he came with seniors and people out of school, and they were all just drunk as a skunk. And I didn't drink it as a freshman. I didn't drink anything. They tried. My father had a big gallon jug of Paisano wine that they tried to steal. I had to rip out of their hands. I was filming like in the sandpit of my father's house, and they kept smoking from a pipe they tried to steal from my father's house, and were blowing the hits in my face. And again, I was young and innocent at the time. Yeah, but we ended up passing that film in to Doherty.
What was it?
You didn't throw anybody an ass whooping, Wally?
It was like a Nate. I think you were on our team too. Like it was a King Arthur and the stone kind of.
Yes.
I don't remember details of it. It was like a King Arthur, and there was a sword. You had to pull something out of a stone. I don't remember a lot.
All
That's
I remember,
balls, though.
so I remember one
as like side effects. I love that shit.
One group. I forget who it was. They did like this cops spoof where like
Seth Richards.
Yeah,
I remember it well.
Powdered sugar was illegal, and the cops pulled him over. It's like, this is powdered sugar, isn't it? It's like, no, it's cocaine, I swear. Don't lie to me.
I remember that too. I'm pretty sure it was Seth
man.
Richards. It may be Seth Gilman.
Seth Richards was with me, yeah, because I did Seth Richards and me and Ben Maxfield. I think we did ours and Jeff Mott. I think we did ours together. Oh man,
that's great.
Gosh,
that was a good memory.
That's a great memory. I hadn't thought about that in forever.
Almost as good as remembering, that half of the 4x1 record holding team is on this panel.
That's a good point.
That's
a
trip down memory.
Why do you remember that?
Yeah, you hooked us up. You hooked us up. Although in good form, Wally, I really wish you would have also noticed the female records as well, and quoted some of the females in our so that we're equal. Just so that we're equal, male and female. Hey, we could have tagged them. They could be. You never know. That's the whole point.
I don't know if I recognized any. No, there were a couple people that were still on. I don't remember people from our time. I want to say.
Well, by our time, I mean just like anybody that
well,
was
we were
like from your brother's class to us, and anything in between.
Yeah, people that were
like female record holders.
Huh?
You're talking female record holders from our back in our day.
Yeah, I'm just noting that Wally wasn't diverse. He was very sexist. He only saw the males, and he only saw his friends, which I totally appreciate. I'm pointing out, that next time, take note.
I apologize. I didn't go into greater detail with the women's 800-meter record holder at Winnisquam Regional High School. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about the 4x1 record for Winnisquam women's track. I apologize. Hand up. That's on me.
I bet they would.
I wanted to bring it to the people present on the panel, but you're right. I was sexist in doing so, and I'm going to try to be a better person. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn from this.
That's all we can ask. I appreciate that. I appreciate your honesty, Wally.
All records from those days.
I apologize.
All the female records from those days belong to Shannon O'Brien. So
that was Christina Howe. Was it Christina Howe? Great behind us. That was a really fast break. She still had a couple, I think.
Was her name Howe then?
Ham. Wasn't it Ham?
Ham wasn't Ham. No, it was Christina. What the hell was it?
I'd say Fogarty.
Finnemore.
Finnemore. Yeah. Yes, Christina Finnemore.
You're right. Yeah.
Tim, you
she was
remember
very
her.
fast.
She was.
What?
So, Tim, you remember her? Weren't you guys making out in the back of the bus or something like that?
I don't know.
Maybe
I made out with a lot of people.
I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah.
Right.
So Iran.
Iran.
So we're done. We're done talking about Cloud City. Wally, we talked about track. We all ran. So now let's talk about Iran and Israel.
There you
Wally,
go.
did you want to start with that?
I was actually curious about your perspective on it because it feels to me, but very dangerous, like something that I don't think we should have anything to do with. Like part of it was like I think Trump, if I remember correctly, campaigned on in part to get us out of foreign wars that don't involve us, right? Like I remember that being a common theme of his election, and to then insert ourselves or continue to flirt with the idea of inserting ourselves into a war with Iran. And I'm not going to debate the merits of doing so. Like, I'm not going to tell you, try to stay here and say Iran's a great country that we should really try to support. And that's not what I'm doing. What I am saying is that I don't see any reason why we need to insert ourselves into that war. I think it's a dangerous, dangerous proposition. I think that, I appreciate our support of Israel through the years, and I want to continue to do so. This feels a little bit different. This is an aggression versus a reaction, which I think is a really important distinction.
Yeah,
And
I would.
if I can make myself crystal clear, I don't think we should have anything to do with it. I think we should need to stay the hell out of it.
Yeah. So you want my opinion?
Sean Ryan agrees with me, by the way.
Well, I mean, I agree on as far as we don't need another Iraq or Afghanistan. We don't,
And this is
but
that, right?
but I mean, it could be potentially, but
I don't. Yeah.
it could it also be just because one Arab nation is involved, and it's also, I'm not saying there might be some religious reasons why they're actually fighting, but let's go back to the 1940s. No one wanted to help, France when Germany invaded France, and it took a global impact, meaning Germany decided to, hurt us, or I'm sorry, Japan decided to take allegiance away from us and then join Germany and bomb us, and that's what got us involved. So, do we want a catastrophe like that to happen? Who was that? Who's the chirping spider? All right. Barking frogs. I don't know if it's going to get to that level, to be honest with you, but if we, I would. I know for a fact if things are going to happen, the tip of the spear will be there. We may not be there in a large scale capacity, but whoever we choose as an ally, and I imagine it's Israel because we've backed them in the past. Although we're saying, we don't agree with what they're doing, they're still an ally of ours, so we're going to support them in some capacity. Does that mean boots on the ground in Iran, like on Iranian soil, and us canoeing heads with our rifles? I don't know, but I would assume at some point it'll probably come to that, and it'll be tip of the spear people like our special forces, our Delta Force, to include CIA operatives, like on a clandestine level that we probably can't comprehend. So we'll be involved in some way, shape, or form. But I agree that there shouldn't be a large scale where we mobilize troops and brigades and divisions to go assist our allies in this fight. Like, let them figure it out. And then and again, you're asking me because you saw the post that I put on, the social media, and I like that motivated me. Like I agree, because part of the post was, in the past we've had wars where, we've done the right thing politically, as in we're going to move into this country, be super nice, and that creates what we would call urban warfare. That means when we drive from the Kuwaiti port, we'll use that as an example, the Kuwaiti port to Baghdad. When we do that without resistance, then we implant ourselves in an environment where we're surrounded by the enemy 360 degrees. When we go in and strategically go town to town, stop at each town, we're not necessarily talking about genocide, all right? But we're talking about stopping at a town,
Not
and
necessarily talking about
we're not going to
genocide.
move we're not going to move forward until we've identified the enemy and we've taken out the enemy. Now, if we look at Vietnam in our past history, like that was, I would say that was genocide. Like we just, anybody that opposed us, we definitely let them understand that you shouldn't oppose us, right? And we moved from point A to point B aggressively, and there were innocent lives that were killed. Same with on the same level of like carpet bombing cities and towns, right? Innocent lives were lost, and I wouldn't be the first person to admit that. But in doing and again in inducing ourselves into an urban combat environment, like we're familiar with that and we can handle that, but that's not the environment that we want to put ourselves in. But also we need to understand we're not going to we're probably never ever going to see a war where we know our environment, we understand our environment, we know our enemy, we can easily identify our enemy. Like we're the only ones that wear freaking uniforms and have a flag on our shoulder, for crying out loud, that identify us. Everybody else wants to, they'll say that they're wearing that uniform, but they'll throw garments on over it to mask it so that we can't tell, walk around with weapons. And it's also in a country that where brandishing weapons out in public is tolerated, and there's no law against it. So it'll get messy for sure. I don't want us to get involved. I agree, but I do think that there's something to be said about if you want peace, prepare for war. Like it's not on our soil, and I don't ever want a war to be here. And your kids and your kids' kids, and you guys specifically do not want to see that. Like that's not what any American wants to see, is a war on our soil. So
I'm not aware of anyone calling for boots on the ground. Are you?
no, but that
No,
was
but no, I'm not aware of that at all. No.
yeah,
Okay.
no, but that's what's going to happen undoubtedly. As far as, again, our special forces, our Delta operators, our Navy SEALs, they're already over there. I guarantee you,
Right.
they're already over there.
Right.
They're liaison with CIA operatives. It's on a small scale. There might, you could probably count on the two hands of the president how many individuals we have over there.
Right.
But they're over there, and that number more than likely will only increase because of everything else that's going on. So
Well, now correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the goal is to eliminate Iran's nuclear capacity. And from what I've heard, it would because because of Israel's strategic strikes, all that's really left is Fordo, the nuclear capacity that's buried, 60 some odd meters in the ground, and where the presumably these the nuclear capabilities are being, that's like sort of the last bastion of the nuclear strength of Iran. And from what I've heard is that the discussion is, well, Israel, as far as we know, does not have the capacity to hit Fordo because they don't have the MOP bombs that are necessary to penetrate. And so the request is that either we give it to them to do B-2 bombers, or we just do it ourselves. Is that kind of what you understand?
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. So it
like-
seems like neither of those options would require a prolonged conflict. If you're not interested in regime change or nation building, you're just interested in eliminating a nuclear capacity.
Yeah. And honestly, like there's no need for any U.S. person to be on that plane. We just deliver the goods, as they say, and then let Israel do it. It should be that simple, but I think there's a reason why it's not that simple, and there's things we're not being told, which makes sense. It's probably more complicated than that.
I mean, let's play it out, right? So say we do get involved. I don't foresee Iran taking that sitting down, right? They've already started to bomb Israel. Israel is going to say, hey, as long as they're bombing us, we're going to retaliate. It just continues to escalate from there. And I don't think it's that outlandish. You've been hearing about China sending planes over to Iran and there being connections in that regard. I mean, this could grow exponentially very quickly. Iran's not going to take this sitting down. And when was the last time we've successfully, I mean, you may say we're not talking about regime change, but the Ayatollah's not backing down. Like, he's not going to back down. They're going to continue to fight until their last breath, which is thereby going to force the U.S. and Israel conglomerate to do a regime change. I don't see any way around it. Otherwise, they're going to keep coming back and keep attacking.
Well,
Yeah, no,
I hope that Israel steps in and is the deciding factor in that. Like, yes, should coalition forces or allies decide and figure out and put somebody in place if that's what they want to do. I do agree with that, but it's almost a breath of fresh air to see somebody else besides the United States doing that. And I agree to your point. Like, okay, China's going to send, the ramifications of the ripple effect of us even giving any of our assets for Israel to use, which in theory we have already done because our capabilities as far as radar detection and shooting down the majority of the missiles that have been shot into Israel has been our technology, and not only our technology but our troops. We have a substantial battery of air defense over the Arabian Gulf, in Bahrain, and also on the opposite side of the Gulf, which is in Jordan.
What do they call it? The Iron Dome, or what do they call it?
Yeah.
Well, that's Israel's air defense system specifically. That doesn't include ours.
But isn't ours part of isn't it basically our system that we put over their country? I thought I heard that somewhere.
We've definitely helped improve, yes. But we are,
and I mean, it isn't most of Israel's. I mean, I feel like they buy a lot of their defense supplies directly from us. Correct? I think if we went back,
a lot of the technologies, a lot of the technologies that they have were originated with us, and we've sold those technologies to them, and they implement them and enforce them in their military disciplines.
So
as they
Israel going to war probably benefits America's economy significantly, wouldn't you say? If we're supplying them with their defense supplies, right? You're saying that a significant percentage of their. I
would say just as much as us giving aid to the Ukraine. Like, we haven't seen any. As far as we know, we haven't seen any money back from that.
Yeah. But, so where does it stop then?
I don't know. That's the question.
This is just Ukraine again, right? We're just getting ourselves into another quagmire, an inextricable quagmire.
See, I don't see it like that. I think that Iran is way more devastated than is commonly understood. They have zero air defense. The Israeli were flying sorties in there in midday unopposed. They've got essentially biplanes.
What's a sortie, Tim?
What?
What's a sortie?
Sortie is like a targeted air raids, right? You know more than I do. Why are you smirking at me like that, you asshole?
I want you to use different terminology for our audience specifically. Like, just because you understand it doesn't mean everybody else does.
Okay. They're doing targeted attacks. And where was I? I don't remember where I was.
They're undeterred. All of their attacks are hitting target because there's
so
no
much
air
so
defense.
that they were able. The Israelis were able to target when Iran was about to launch a missile, it would get a couple missiles down, and then Israel would blow up the missile battery. And so I don't think that is any meaningful defense. So to get involved in what? The point is to eliminate Iran's nuclear capacity. You can do that with
Yeah.
two bunker busters. And then there is already, from what I understand, I mean, we all have to take into consideration that the information we're getting might be filtered through some propaganda. But the information that I've seen is that there's a significant portion of their Iranian populace who does not want their regime to continue. And so I think that there is already sort of like the wind changes of potential regime changes happening within the country itself. And so I think it could be as easy as no boots on the ground, drop a couple of bombs. Nuclear capacity is taken care of. Let's all get back to life as we know it. I don't see a prolonged conflict personally.
And then we're on to North Korea, right? They hit all those same benchmarks, right? We should probably do the same there.
That's a good question.
I hope.
Boy, I'm a little concerned about those Indians too. The India is not necessarily the best country. I think we ought to probably intervene there too. I mean, safety. We got to be safe, right?
No, I think that you're
maybe some
equivocating.
drones.
I think you're equivocating because Iran has been very vocal that they do not think Israel should exist. And when you say that another country should not exist, and you have the religious impetus to be able to that this is actually the right thing to do, is the destruction of the Jewish state, then the first strike capability, the first strike option that Israel took is understandable.
No, I completely agree with. I agree with that. I agree wholeheartedly with, if you're going to be the bully and you're not ready to get punched in the mouth, or you're the person that's being bullied, you should be ready. And that's also you didn't see it, Tim, but the rant that I put on social media was I think he was a Fox broadcaster that was prior military, and he was like, no red-blooded American wants to go to war like Afghanistan, like Iraq. But I plead to you, Donald Trump, if you decide to go, then let's do this the American way. Let's go, and we will come out and we will punch, until there's nothing but a bloody mess, essentially. These are my words, not his, but we'll keep punching until there's a bloody mess left in front of us, and then we'll walk over that and then find the next target and do the same.
Yeah, man, just like we did in Vietnam. Just like we did in Afghanistan. That's a great fucking idea. It's worked out so well for us.
My point to that is
it's so well for us.
It's refreshing. It's refreshing that Israel, the country of Israel, again, a threat, verbal threat, however they perceived it, they acted on it. And are we associated with that? I feel like because we're allied with them, yes, we are. Just as much as, and this is not about, honestly, Israel against Iran. I think the entire world is hoping that other nations don't come to Iran's defense and start doing things that they otherwise wouldn't unless this had actually happened. And then that would force Israelis allies to come to their defense, and then it creates again something that's escalated into what none of us want to see on a global aspect. And so,
and let's not forget that who backed Hamas, who did the October 7th attacks and slaughtered? It was Iran. Who backs Hezbollah? It's Iran. And so maybe there's no direct attacks like Iran didn't first strike Israel, but they've got all the punks in the area paid off to go in and do some damage. And so
there's been plenty of bad shit coming out of Saudi Arabia too, right? Like, I mean, haven't they sanctioned some pretty significant terrorist actions as well?
It's a good point, and I think that
they have.
I think that right. I mean, 9/11, didn't they come out of Saudi Arabia?
That's what I'm saying, right?
Right.
Like,
sure,
But the new prince of Saudi Arabia is showing some very interesting pro-West. He is turning pro-West in some interesting ways. And when you had the Abraham Accords that were just on the brink of being signed before Trump left office the first time, and it seems to me,
And we get billions and billions of dollars from them. Yeah. I mean,
right? But I
They
mean,
said
to
they
your
were
point,
sorry, Wally. They said they were sorry. All
to
right.
your
all
point, I mean,
right.
the billions of dollars thing. I think the Abraham Accords is like it's an attempt to make an economic truce, so to speak. Like, yeah, we disagree about these things, but our people can mutually benefit from the economic exchanges that we have. And so let's at least agree on that. But Iran was the big bad guy in this. That was really the one that all these other Middle Eastern countries were like, sort of like, we need to have solidarity against this. And so if you get Iran's nuclear capacity out of the conversation, then what does that look like for going forward as far as peace in the Middle East? I don't know. It is a bloody mess, as you say.
It is a mess. Yeah. And
It
again, I'm
could
not
be.
debating. Like, I'm not sitting here saying Iran is a great country full of good people. Like, I understand I understand the bad they've done and the danger they present. I just don't know
Well,
what success looks like with this, and I don't like. I don't see a way that we're not tied up in a mess for the next decade.
I see how this success is that we fuck up their nuclear capabilities. Like that's it. Like that's done. I'm not saying I'm supporting that, but I'm saying that that's I get the objective. I understand the assignment. Let's make sure these guys know that they will never be able to take out Nate, Tim, or you, or our kids, or whatever. Like, because they have capabilities that what lead them to like what a country over, two country over, something like that. And they seem to want this. They seem to want these nuclear capabilities that could possibly harm us. I don't like that. That doesn't sound good to me. So I think that's the goal uh, in Iran right now. But
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
No.
yeah,
it's 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 very again, I think it's more about the reaction on a global scale and the things that could happen. Uh the easiest thing, if Iran has no air defense capabilities and they can't stop their people or their areas of responsibility from being bombarded, regardless of if they're densely populated or not, they should surrender. Throw up the white flag. That will stop everything. You know, and the world police, i.e. UN, whoever, would step in and give them aid because in all intents and purposes, they were attacked. Some would say unprovoked, some would say yes, they provoked verbally, but they were attacked. So they're the victim in this scenario, right? And
right,
so if their capabilities to defend themselves have been degraded to a point where they cannot do that anymore, and they're only going to suffer mass casualties every time that they're hit, they should swallow their pride, surrender, don't need to apologize. That doesn't include an apology to whoever, to the Israelites or anybody in that nation. They can still hate them, but
Mm.
that'll stop more pain and suffering from coming
Yeah.
their way. Uh, that's the
I
quick fix. But then again, I think the longer this keeps going on and they don't surrender, then more countries like, unfortunately, China and Russia are probably going to come to their aid. And then
well, Russia's tied up right now a little bit.
I don't think that they are tied up with this one of the, yeah, they are, but I still think that they would definitely get involved. And China and Russia's navy is large enough to where they could deploy a small percentage and still make an impact, especially on both of those nations. Not just they could help with air defense in Iran, but they could also put a nice little black eye with some of their capabilities as far as ballistic capabilities coming from the the ships that they have into Israel. So I think
I
it's
will
going to get
say,
uglier, but
one of the misinterpretations, I think, of Middle Eastern countries, Islamic countries, and I think this has been present for a very long time, is we approach them with a Western view of people are inherently good. Um, People will listen to reason, and we all kind of want the same things in life, you know. And but when you get into matters of faith, which is a large part of these conflicts in the Middle East, faith has the ability to it it is willing to go to the nth degree. When you believe that you have the jurisdiction from God to do this or that thing, then to not do that thing would be disobedience to a divine authority. And so jihad and these are the, I think we just fundamentally misunderstand. This is a matter of extreme faith. And I know for my faith, I would die for my faith. I wouldn't kowtow for this or that, or Lord willing, I would be able to take a bullet for my faith. And so, um, if this is what I believe needs to happen, this is what I will do.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm not listening to your reason or your Western, like, oh, well, why don't you just be gentle, like live and let live? Like, what are you talking about? This is, and so we need to understand the mentality of faith, which largely in irreligious America doesn't really do.
No, you're right. Because the Iranian people, if you believe the news stories, have said like Trump, you're threatening to kill us. We don't care. That'd be
Right.
awesome. Kill
Right.
us. That sounds amazing to us. So
Yeah.
yeah, Tim, that's a good point.
Yeah,
Why are you laughing, Nate?
I don't know. It's the edible.
That'll
No,
do it.
no, it's not. It's
Maybe a
just
little
I
bit.
don't know. I feel like I agree with what you said, Tim, about, if you're willing to take a bullet for your religion or your beliefs, like absolutely. I think everybody should have something in life that they're willing to do that for. Maybe it's not your religious beliefs, maybe it's your family. I don't know, but there should be something in your life that you're willing to die for. Otherwise, potentially you haven't truly lived. But I do think, you know, I don't know if it's so much religious oppression, but if somebody's telling me I shouldn't believe in a certain way, then that escalates things exponentially. No one should tell anybody what they should or shouldn't believe when it comes to whether it's, again, if we want to break religion down into deities slash witches slash wizards, it doesn't matter. Like we shouldn't tell anybody how they should, or who they should spend their time worshiping as a deity in general. And
Yeah.
when
I mean,
religious oppression is still a real thing, and we all understand. So
I
sorry,
mean,
go ahead.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying, but I want to point out that the phrase "people shouldn't tell other people what they should believe" is seen from an Islamic context as an infidel statement. Like that's a
Yeah, no,
Western view of things,
there's a whole
and
bunch of
you're
hypocrisy. Yeah,
right, right.
absolutely.
So it's so that that's the whole thing is you're spouting Western infidelity, and that's just that's like your perspective, man. To quote the dude,
Yeah,
and
and
but
it's
I agree
also
with you.
how,
I'm just saying from
and that's one of those things that they could also, well, that's how you interpret it. That's not what we mean when we,
yeah,
semantics, so to speak. But
yeah.
uh, I hope it doesn't turn into a lengthy campaign, and the longer it lingers, the longer things are going on, the more apt we are to get ourselves involved on a small scale, obviously to start, and then as soon as there's a report about American lives being lost, then escalate
Different
onto a
story.
larger scale.
Yep. Different story right there. Yep.
Mm.
But yeah, that's all I had to talk about, boys. If there's something specifically that you guys wanted to talk about,
Mm.
are we good? All right.
I'm ready for my
Well,
joke, man.
I think next week, well, I don't know
Dad
about next
joke.
week. At some point I want to talk about China and like the things that they're doing that we're not doing, not necessarily on a like when we're talking about wargaming, but just like production slash, they're mining the moon and they're mining for helium-3, and
Oh, yeah.
helium-3 is something that produces a ridiculous amount of energy here on Earth but you can't actually manufacture it or collect it on Earth. It's easier to collect on the dark side of the moon, so to speak, or where you can't see it, but it's easier to collect in space. And they're mining it, and I'm guessing they're using it for energy, but they're doing a whole bunch of other things that we're aware of, but we're not particularly paying any attention to. And I'd like to at some point discuss that, or you guys figure out what about China you don't like, things you like. I love the food, love Chinese food, don't want that to go away, but some of the things that they're doing, uh,
They're pretty effective at controlling their people. Like I'll give them credit there.
Their people will just do what they say. That's
Yeah.
They're very good. They're very good at that. I don't disagree. All
Just
right.
ask Jack Ma. Did you see what
Who's
they did
that?
with Jack Ma? Are you familiar? He used to own Alibaba, which is like the Chinese Amazon. And he was a fairly vocal dissident of kind of the control of the Chinese government. He disappeared for like 6 months and then came back like as a loyal Chinese supporter. And he owned one fraction of the company he built. Like, you don't speak out against China in China. You just don't do it.
Not.
You don't do that.
Yeah. He should have moved his operations outside of China and like hired some security or something. But all right, we'll end with the dad joke of the week.
Let's go.
So, what do you call a bear with no teeth?
Gummy bear.
Yep. Good job. Nice work.
Nice.
I knew one of the dads.
Nice job.
I knew one of the dads.
Nice job.
Gummy bear. Nice job. All right, y'all. Thanks for hopping on. I love y'all. I love talking to y'all. We need to do this in person someday.
We do.
Someday
That'd
in
be
the
awesome.
future. All right. Like, subscribe, follow. We'll talk to y'all next week for sure, hopefully.
All right.
All right,
Bye.
man. Love y'all.
All right.
Hey, boys.
Love you guys.